Welcome to Pat Sherlock's podcast series, interviews with top mortgage sales leaders. Learn practical tips for improving sales management results. Let's get started.
Hi, everyone. This is Pat Sherlock, and welcome to the podcast. Today's topic is a fabulous topic, getting out of your comfort zone. And I have the perfect executive to talk about this, and that's Andrew Clarkson. Andrew is Vice President and National Head of Production for United Federal Credit Union. Previous to that, Andrew was with Lake Michigan. He was with Chase and Quicken Loans. Hi, Andrew.
Hi, Pat. Thanks for having me on today. I really appreciate it.
Well, this is a fabulous topic, as I said, because it is certainly one of the number one issues that I see all the time is that people refuse to move on to something new and different. But before we jump into that, let's talk about how did you, Andrew, get into mortgage banking?
Good question. So I actually got into mortgage banking in 2006, right after graduating from Michigan State, took my first job at Quicken Loans as a loan officer, consumer direct channel. I was, dialing for dollars, basically. That's where I learned the business, a great proving grounds for it.
Well, that's interesting. You certainly started in really an interesting market. It was still a hot market at that point, right?
It was still, it was a really hot market at that point. It was kind of the tail end right before, September 2007 happened. And, for that year period, it was really good. But then, only being 12 months into mortgage banking before, the Great Recession hit, making it through that point, that 2007, 2008 period, that taught me so much about the business. And some people say, man, one of the worst times to start mortgage banking. I thought the opposite. I thought times where, markets constrict and contract, that's kind of a good time to not only learn skills, but also, learn sales, learn the business. And it makes you really, really want to progress in the field, especially when you're up against a wall.
Well, that's really a great point that you're making. Talk to us about your challenges in your current position as head of national production.
I would say the challenges are, I think any leader wants to put the entire company on their back and charge forward, right? And in this type of market where it seems very market driven, it's just making it very clear to everybody that success happens in any market. There's no constraints around being successful. And you can make excuses like, it's a market, there's a downturn, there's all this stuff. Well, you can still be successful as long as you're willing to take your slice of the pie.
Well, that's an excellent point. I can't agree with you more that, in other words, there's great opportunities now for sure. So when you see these trends in mortgage banking, what do you see happening in the rest of the year?
I wish I had the crystal ball. Obviously no one does. And obviously that's very cliche to me to say, but the rest of the year, I feel like we're kind of going towards, I don't want to say normal market, but at the same time, it feels like, a normal market in conjunction with this crazy rate thing that's happening, right? Where we thought at this point of the year, we might see rates retreat a little bit. The thing that really affected us was interest rates moved north, very quickly over a short period of time, which it seemed like the train kind of just stopped dead in its tracks. But the rest of the year, I think we'll still see some rates retreat a little bit. I hope that, the National Association of Realtors and the MBA and Freddie Mac, the economists at those associations and groups are right. And that we do see rates, move downward into that, mid to lower 6% range. I think if that happens, especially with what's happening with home values right now, we could see an extended market, throughout the rest of the year, and maybe we'll benefit by some refis by the end of the year too. Who knows? Those things are mainly things, the ones that we can't control, right? But what I would like to see for the rest of the year is, who's going to be left standing in this business, right? Who's dedicated to the mortgage space? Who's dedicated to being a great loan officer? Those people that are well within their careers still have the opportunity to, continue to have great business and take their fair share of the market.
Well, that's a great tie-in to my next question regarding, have you had to change your managing style? It's been a more difficult market. Have you made changes that you might have not done in the past?
I don't think there's a lot of changes in what my day-to-day is. I think it's more change in the frequency of what I do. Before, when, we were in, 2020, 2021, there's so much business everywhere that everybody was just reacting to it. There wasn't a lot of sales calls that were happening. There weren't a lot of lunch and learns, in-person events, appointments, meetings, coffees, lunches, all those things that are driving business to the loan officer, to the credit union. But now that everybody has had time, I feel that the frequency of those things, reaching out to your referral partners, realtors, builders, offering up continuing education classes or mortgage 101 classes, getting your business partners, like, your mortgage insurance partners involved in your business. I think the frequency is just amped up a whole lot more. We're still doing the sales calls. We're still doing all that kind of stuff, but everyone's working a lot harder for, the same amount.
Well, that's also very true, and certainly leads to our main topic today, and talking about getting out of your comfort zone. So why don't we talk about the issue of what is a comfort zone from your perspective?
I think a comfort zone, when I look at it through the business lens, is, let's say it's somebody that has been, average successful, that you can say at the end of the day, I've had a successful business, and you know exactly how many loans that you're going to close every single month. I can count on closing, 8 to 12 loans every single month, and I feel comfortable doing that. Well, that's shifted over the last 12 months. Those 8 to 12 loans aren't coming so easily right now. And I feel that the behaviors really haven't changed, but the expectations are still there. And when it comes down to it, people aren't inspecting, their expectations, right? And I think right now, most of those loan officers that have relied on that and have been comfortable to earn a certain amount of money, close a certain amount of loans, go on a certain amount of sales calls, they're now realizing, if they haven't realized already, that, wait a second, I need to start, or I need to continue to do more of those things that were driving the bottom line for me, that were filling the top of the funnel. And that's what the comfort zone looks like to me.
So when you talk about that from a manager's standpoint, and certainly managers see this quite frequently, is that these individuals, to get them to move out of the comfort zone, it's not that easy. And so talk about some of the things that you do.
I agree. It's obviously not that easy to get somebody outside of their comfort zone, because I feel like it's the old, cliche thing, like, if someone wants to gain muscle or lose weight, they got to eat right. They got to go to the gym, right? You can tell a person what they have to eat. You can tell a person how many times they have to work out and how many pull-ups and push-ups they have to do, and, how many miles that they have to run a day. But you have to be inspired. That individual has to be inspired in order to, create change, within them, within their lives, all that kind of stuff. So I think the conversation truly starts with, what's your purpose? What's your goal? What does success look like for you? How do you think that you can get there? And, having that self-realization moment of, like, okay, this is where I stand today. And in order for me to get to the place where I want to go, these are the things that I think I have to do. Let me seek coaching, let me seek training, let me seek further, assistance and education. What are other people that are successful in this industry? What are they doing? What does that look like? So I think that self-realization thing has to happen, Pat.
And that's really something. Can the manager really drive that? Certainly the manager can present an environment, but at the end, is it really up to the individual to make that first step?
Yeah, I think it's definitely up to the individual to make the first step. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, I think that any leader can have a profound effect on self-realization. You can drive conversations in a certain direction where you pull out, what that looks like to the individual contributor, to a loan officer. And I think it starts there, because if you're having the conversation in the first place, obviously the leader and the loan officer are there together to have that conversation for a reason. And a lot of good can come out of that initial conversation or a series of conversations, and even coming up with a business coaching plan too. So I think the first step, you're right, Pat, it has to happen, within that person. But, coaches and trainers and business consultants, they obviously have a great impact as well.
So when you let's look at the individual that is in a comfort zone, and I certainly see it from a training perspective, is that you do have a percentage of the loan officers that fundamentally don't want to change. I mean, it does come down to that issue. Do you address that in a marketing plan, or how does it get surfaced? Because they might tell you one thing, but actually doing another is certainly may not happen.
I think the conversation surfaces pretty naturally, because especially right now, where we've been in terms of production, some of the loan officers in the market, they're obviously not closing as many loans today because they're still exhibiting the same behaviors, and they're still trying to do the same things that they've done in the past and get the same results. Well, that doesn't work in today's environment. So, instead, what happens now is that conversation that's happening initially is, okay, obviously I need to make a change. What are the top things that I can do in order to, make an impact, on my business within the next 30 days, within the next 60 days? And then we come up with a strategy of what that might look like. If you're a loan officer at X company, do you offer construction loans? What is your IQ in construction loans? Do you offer portfolio lending? And, how do you sell yourself? What are the things what's the value that you provide to a referral partner? Do you, do education classes with realtors? So we try to pull out the strengths of the individual and really exploit those strengths when creating the strategic plan.
And so when you talk about, we've been talking about the loan officer side, but comfort zone also applies on the managerial side, where, in other words, the state of our industry is changing dramatically. We're in a TikTok world. And of course, some of the managers were in just having a phone world. And so how do you handle that when you're supervising managers that are in a comfort zone?
Yeah, that's a good question too, because it's the same, but it's obviously a little bit different because they're leading this group of, individual contributors, right? We focus on wins, what's important now. What's important now to change our business or our behaviors, our daily actions that could have a positive effect on the team. So we're big proponents, of clear communication and of time blocking. Time blocking has been a really big thing for us, where we can dedicate certain time out of our week to either business development, doing joint sales calls, and doing those coaching activities. So we've seen success there.
So do you establish goals like at the loan officer level and also at the managerial level, that there's certain activities that you're looking for? And then is there a ramification if those activities don't happen, or is there some type of measurement that is done to monitor it to see if it's actually occurring?
Yeah, so we do business tracking. We've created this template, pretty straightforward one, and it kind of shows, what the overall goal is in terms of volume, in terms of units. But then we tried, those are really lag measures,
Sure.
We really look for those lead measures of how many calls did you make today? How many appointments did you make? How many coffees? How many lunches? How many were with realtors? How many were with builders? How many of those were joint sales calls, seg relationships? So we have goals established around all of those up front. And we really track those on a weekly and monthly basis.
And so what's the ramifications? So let's say on a weekly basis, the person was supposed to do a certain number and they did not do it. What happens then? I mean, how are you moving towards moving them? Could be could be an education issue, could be a comfort zone issue. How do you move them out of that? And how does the sequence work? Does it go from you to the local manager, or talk about what that looks like?
Yeah, we have biweekly leadership meetings,
Mhm.
and we really run the department as one unit, one team.
Mhm.
So everybody's held accountable to their goals, and it could be something as simple. And the way that we do it is when we go around the table and we're talking about, did we meet expectations or didn't we meet expectations? It's a really quick informative thing, and everybody is listening in, everyone's on the hook, so there's a little bit of onus on everybody, right? Because you
Mhm.
don't want to get to your turn and say, oh, didn't meet it. You want to get to your turn and you want to say, met my sales call goals, on track, nothing's blocking me right now from meeting my goals. But there are those times where, yes, there's someone that speaks up and says, well, really didn't make my number of joint sales calls, didn't meet my one-on-one coachings that I wanted to do this week. So then it's, something to the effect of, hey, let's catch up on this. I want to find out what's blocking you from accomplishing your goals. And, usually it's something like, had some fires, day got away from me, got caught in the whirlwind of what this
Mhm.
business is, right? So then we look at ways of how we can remove the whirlwind, how we, maybe we're not time blocking, or maybe you just was one of those epic things that happened where
Sure.
you got caught in the whirlwind and couldn't get out. So, the communication among the team is super important.
So, Andrew, when you see this in the big picture, as our industry is changing dramatically, even certainly we're in the process of looking like a purchase money market for a rather long time in high competition. It does really move back to this issue in the selection side of it. There are people with a growth mindset and there are people with the fixed mindset. And those people with the fixed mindset are very much need to be spotted early on. Are you tying together getting them out of the comfort zone in the interview process?
Yeah, we really go deep now. Ultimately it's not going to be worth anyone's time if you hire somebody that just wants to be a gatherer, right?
Sure.
This is a hunter's market, and I think it always has been, really, because the purchase market is really what moves everything. You don't want to be one of the numbers that goes through a refi boom and then goes through a 40% reduction. We've seen it with so many different business models out there where mortgage companies have, shuttered their doors because, their business model doesn't work right now. And they will be back eventually, once we get into the refi booms again. But in the interview process, it is so important to have those honest conversations with everybody and not just be focused on that, one win of getting somebody on board. You want to get somebody on board that's going to propel the growth of the business. That's really what you want to focus on. I'd rather hire one great hire than 10, people that aren't going to be pounding the pavement, looking to create relationships, looking to get their share of the purchase market. So you have to vet it out with questions. And we use data too. We use data analytics reporting of
Sure.
kind of compare it to that. But you can learn a lot by asking 2, 3, 4 more questions than you normally do in an interview.
Well, I think it's really important, and I'm glad to hear that you're doing that, because we're really going to need a different type of an employee going forward. And that employee has to have a growth mindset where they have to self-develop for sure. And it's not just the lender's issue, which leads to our last couple of questions that I'd like to ask you, Andrew. When you have to share some of your best takeaways of getting people out of the comfort zone, what are the things that you want to share with our audience today?
I would say, if you haven't done it already, and this is going to sound cliche, Pat, but it's cliche because a lot of people use it and it works,
Mhm.
is to write down your top 3 most important things that you want to accomplish. And then underneath those top 3 things that you want to accomplish, write down 6 things that you could change in your business today that would have an impact on those top 3 things. And that's really it. Start with that. And then after you do that and you're looking for the next thing, seek out an accountability partner, seek out a mentor, seek out a business coach, seek out somebody that's going to, it could be, your manager, it could be a colleague, a peer, or, you could hire an outside consultant that I see a lot of loan officers that are successful doing today. You could do that as well.
Well, I think you're exactly right. And I think they're excellent points that you're making. And I want to thank you for sharing with our audience today these key points. And also, I want to thank our listeners for spending time with us. Thanks so much. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you, Pat. Good talking to you.
Thanks for listening to our podcast. We appreciate you spending time with us. If your sales team needs training in hiring and lead generation, schedule a free consultation by emailing me at psherlock@qfsconsulting.com.